Lads, Liverpool are a magnificent club, okay? One of the biggest football institutions in the world, who most footballers would dream of playing for, right? Yeah, sure. But I am sorry. This Hugo EKITIKE business is so infuriating that it generally feels like I've just found my nan's eyeballs in my pie. It feels like I realized that my toothbrush was used to clean a pig's nose. Although I am the Irish guy, and I'll be honest, I am annoyed. Do you know how many highlight package clips of EKITIKE I have watched this week? I feel like I've seen every touch of a football he's ever had in his life. I mean, if my mom were to search my history, she would absolutely think I'm stalking a guy called Hugo. Right now, she probably thinks I'm in his basement sniffing his shoes. And for what? What was the point of me soaking up all these highlights when he's off to Liverpool instead? I was dreaming of seeing him in a Magpie shirt, but now? To see that Liverpool have already agreed personal terms with EKITIKE instead? After all of my homework, it's the most traumatizing thing I've seen on the internet all week. And lads, I follow Azalea Banks. Okay, no, I don't really, but you get my point. Yes, this is annoying, especially considering we've all been here before.
Newcastle agree initial £25.6 million deal to buy striker Hugo EKITIKE from Reims.
Yeah. I'm sure I was doing all of this back in 2022 as well. I'm sure that back then I was also dreaming with EKITIKE, the same way you all dream about Bugs Bunny's misses of Space Jam. Admit it, you creepy little frogs. However, I am rattled. I just want to say first off, that I like Craig from Anfield Agenda. I've met him before in True Geordie's house. We were there for a kickoff stream, by the way. No, we hadn't just broken at 4 AM to steal cookies from his fridge. And he's a good guy. I like him. And as the other part of that channel, Connor, he congratulated me for Newcastle lifting the Carabao Cup literally an hour after I left Wembley. They are good guys, and I'd love to go for a picnic with them both, but I'm sorry, you have still rattled me. Again, okay, I like Craig, okay? The only beef here is the expired bacon in my fridge. But not only have Liverpool taken EKITIKE, but this tweet has grilled me like a mini steak sandwich.
Have Newcastle learned their place yet, or do we have to keep taking their targets?
No! I'm sorry, but... No. Not only do you take EKITIKE, but to revel in it like this, asking Newcastle if they've learned their place. This is so mean. You sound like Cinderella's mum, and you're also wrong. Using this as a stick to beat Newcastle with is so incredibly short-sighted. Because am I the only one who remembers that 2 summers ago, Chelsea took not 1, but 2 of your midfield transfer targets in the same week? Once I see that it was offered the chance to become the first £100 million plus player in Liverpool's history, he said no, going to Chelsea instead. Then 4 days later, Romeo Lavia opts out of the obvious succession path from Southampton to Liverpool to also cram himself into Chelsea's squad, leaving the Reds with so much egg in their face, you could have cooked an omelette on their nose. But did that mean that Liverpool now knew their place and had to bow to Chelsea? Do you think Liverpool fans everywhere were queued up to kiss Rory Jennings on the cheek? Do you think that Craig himself was out fetching cookies for the only Chelsea fan in County Wexford and offering him to give him foot rubs whilst this lone Chelsea fan was watching the Downton Abbey box set? No! The time to flex would be when Liverpool took Andy Carroll from Newcastle in 2011. You know, stealing an actual Geordie out of the club. That was quite a big flex at the time. Although in hindsight, I mean, bragging about it now would be a bit like a school bully bragging to his mates because he stole a Jedward album from a nerd. Because yeah, Liverpool fans shouldn't brag about the Carroll deal because they only pulled that off because again, you just had the world-class Fernando Torres robbed earlier that day by Chelsea. Chelsea were also the only club in the world to manage to convince Steven Gerrard to submit a transfer request. Chelsea also took both Benayoun and Raul Meireles out of Anfield without a fuss. Chelsea also managed to convince Rafa Benitez to take the pathetic tag of interim manager just 2 years after he left Anfield. Yes, this man is a Champions League winning, full-blown, immortal legend at Liverpool, and yet Chelsea managed to make him the new Di Matteo. They actually got him to take that lowly temporary job where you automatically feed your dignity to a dog the moment you pick up the pen. That's what Chelsea managed to do to a Liverpool legend. Does this mean that Liverpool should know their place and bow in the company of Chelsea? No! Lads, since the season has ended, the word Isak has featured in 26 video titles on this channel. 26 times since May! He's punched those 4 letters into his keyboard so much, I'm guessing he's worn out the keys. Let's not get it twisted. Aleksandr Isak was the obsession at Liverpool. Liverpool wanted Isak. They badly wanted Isak. They've not signed Isak. Newcastle have kept Isak. So how have Newcastle been put in their place? How can any Liverpool fan be lording this over Newcastle? Because lads, who's the better player? Isak or EKITIKE? Yeah, okay. Which club has Isak? Hello? And now, with EKITIKE off the cards, now Newcastle are looking at signing a short-term stopgap, not one for the future. The potential arrival of Yohan Wissa from Brentford. He's a striker who turns 30 next year. That would indicate a change in plan, right? That would indicate that Newcastle actually want to tie Isak down to a long-term deal. Because, seriously, can anyone imagine Isak being sold next summer now, with the famous number 9 shirt going to a 30-year-old Wissa? It would be like taking the crown off the king and giving it to Danny Dyer to wear at his next barbecue. How is this keeping Newcastle in their place by not signing their best player? I don't get it. I simply don't understand the logic. It'd be like it back in 2014 if Barcelona had come in and sniffed around Luis Suarez at Anfield and then chosen to sign Balotelli instead. And then you had Barca fans tweeting out that Liverpool should get back in their box because they've robbed someone off their shopping list. What? Liverpool are still the ones who kept the world class? What? What? Let's be real here. Were Newcastle really that serious about getting EKITIKE? Because it didn't make sense. This guy is a mini Anelka, a refreshingly breed of new young super talent who is tipped to become the main guy for France at future World Cups. So choosing to come in and plop himself on the Magpies bench would have made no sense. Playing second fiddle to Isak is actually not a fun job. Callum Wilson is 33 and more washed up than the fat Easter bunny, and yet he would rather be unemployed this summer than return to pre-season with Newcastle just to eat crisps on the bench. But at Anfield, there's nobody standing at EKITIKE's path to the first team. So obviously he's going to choose starting Champions League nights at Anfield than watching on from a freezing cold bench. It's why it's kind of madness for Liverpool fans to gloat about this deal. If the club record £70 million bid from Newcastle was genuine, then it was just succession planning. That was the Magpies pretty much admitting that, yep, Isak is for sale next summer. Bring in EKITIKE, get him to learn under the Swede for a year before unleashing the guy as the next Newcastle United number 9 next summer. All the likes of Liverpool had to do was just wait. But instead, you've sewn up your spot for Isak in the team by taking Newcastle's next number 9 instead of the current one. Instead of Liverpool signing Newcastle star striker, you've signed the guy who was supposed to replace him, which is something you should have done 14 years ago. Instead of paying a British record for Andy Carroll, you should have just taken Demba Ba on a free. Maybe then he wouldn't have been around to score the goal to ruin Stevie G's life, and you wouldn't now be breaking out into a panic attack whenever you see a sheep. Thinking about it, you'll get it on the way home. Lads, this is so spooky because Newcastle this summer have failed to sign the exact same 2 strikers they tried to get 3 years ago. Because back in 2022, they wanted both EKITIKE and João Pedro before they were cool. Seriously, Newcastle had just finished 11th in the league. They were off the back of a season where they'd been second bottom at Christmas. They had one Premier League win to their name by the 3rd week of January. Had been kicked out of both the FA Cup and the League Cup without scoring a single goal. Losing at home to both Cambridge and Burnley. Newcastle were rich on paper, sure, but those fans had absolutely no business to be looking at their nose at anyone. And yet Pedro in particular, the potential arrival of him from Watford. Everyone looked at him as if he was a snot sandwich. Yeah, 3 years later, and again, after failing to buy him from Brighton, he's gone to Chelsea instead and made every Geordie jealous. Honestly, watching him light up the Club World Cup, everyone in Newcastle is jealous. The same way Lamine Yamal is clearly jealous of Snow White. It was obvious why EKITIKE said no. It was January 2022, and Newcastle were still heavy favourites for the drop. He said no, understandably said no, and went to PSG instead. And Newcastle got Chris Wood. Wanting EKITIKE back then was so hugely ambitiously unrealistic, especially when he had the likes of Mbappe sliding into his DMs. And wanting him now is weird when his spot is already filled by a brutally world-class Isak. Seriously, I don't think this transfer was ever getting done. And lads, I think Hugo EKITIKE is to Newcastle United what Bafétimbi Gomis used to be to Newcastle. I spent the bulk of my teenage years being promised Gomis, an absolute dynamite league on goal machine. He looked like a lethal freak of a striker. And Newcastle made a £10 million offer for him when he was 22 and at Saint Etienne, whilst he was at Euro 2008 with France. Yeah, the club also returned with further offers in January 2009, and these rumours persisted for 8 fat years. 8 years, that is longer than lost. The last flicker of an interest was when the club made a last-minute loan bid for him after failing to agree the Saido Berahino deal in February 2016. That is 8 years. Yeah, it was weird. Between 2008 and 2016, they were linked with him every single summer. Seriously, even in May 2014, 6 years after the first interest, he was 28 years old at Lyon and demanding £100,000 a week. He was probably demanding that because he knew that everybody who worked at Newcastle fancied him more than they fancied their wives. To be fair, I'm guessing Mike Ashley was just married to his fridge. But yes, I remember Newcastle United being obsessed with Gomis for 8 summers in a row. It was weird, and he never ever pulled on the black and white shirt. And I swear Newcastle signed him at least twice.
Newcastle agree Bafétimbi Gomis fee, claims Lyon president Jean-Michel Aulas.
And well, headlines like this didn't exactly quell my excitement, now did it?
Newcastle hope to sign Lyon's baby Drogba Bafétimbi Gomis.
Baby Drogba? Oh yes, that was absolutely enough to make me drool all over my chicken nuggets. Being obsessed with someone for 8 seasons in a row. Yeah, Gomi made the great Newcastle United look like Ross off Friends. I don't know why this club kept chasing Gomi. I don't know why they were spying on him his whole career, even now. I wouldn't be shocked to find out that Alan Pardew stood as a peephole in Gomis' bathroom, just so you can watch him take a poo in the sink whenever he wants. Gomi actually suffers from a condition where he is liable to faint during times of stress. To this day, he probably still does a check for Newcastle scouts underneath his bed. I'm guessing the mere mention of Newcastle United is enough to make him collapse in his Cheerios. I don't know why this saga lasted for nearly 10 years. He rocked up at Swansea instead, 12 years before they finally became cool. Seriously, because I would imagine there's some very confused chief executives now trying to squeeze next to Modric and Snoop Dogg at the next board meeting. What sort of awkward small talk are they gonna have when everyone's awkwardly queuing up for baked beans at lunch? I think EKITIKE might be the next Gomi, in that he's gonna be pestered by Newcastle for the rest of his life, because Newcastle fans would have done their homework on Gomi. I had no choice. I had this man forced on my throat for years. As a weird little teenager, I was putting more efforts into googling the strength and weaknesses of Gomi than I was doing my actual geography homework, and it's clearly paid off, because to this day I can tell you the birthdays of Gomis' male cousins, but I can't locate China on a map. I think this EKITIKE to Newcastle transfer is going to rumble on and on and on and on, even after he served his time at Liverpool and then goes off to La Liga or Serie A. I think these Newcastle United links are always going to be there. This is not the last we hear of EKITIKE to Newcastle, I can promise you that. I mean, lads, yeah, Liverpool have stolen Newcastle transfer targets in the past, sure. Like back in 2006, when the Reds took Dirk Kuyt from Feyenoord, after the Magpies had been after him for months. But that was the last time Liverpool stole a Toon transfer target. 19 years ago, if anything. Newcastle have stolen a Liverpool transfer target more recently. I mean, if you don't believe me, 16th of June, 2011.
Liverpool edged closer to signing French midfielder Sylvain Marveaux.
Okay. 18th of June, 2011.
Newcastle moved to sign winger Sylvain Marveaux on a 5-year deal.
These headlines were 48 hours apart. Does this mean that Liverpool fans were stuffed in their box? That they now knew their place and had to beg Geordies for a kiss on Facebook? No. I mean, to be fair, neither club needed to have a fight over Marveaux, because he turned out to be a fat smurf with the end product of penguin juice. But yeah, I think EKITIKE is the new Gomi. And this is absolutely not the last we hear of him being linked with Newcastle. Seriously, lads, this is not over. And there's tentative links right now. But what if Newcastle have something else up their sleeve? What if Sheshko? Anyway, that's the interview. Let me know what do you think. Let me know in the comments below. What do you think about these transfer links? Let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and ways. I'll talk shit a while. Okay, I've been on a holiday for a few days, and these bananas have literally sat here. They feel very mushy in my hands. Oh, it's so soggy. Oh, it is the worst. Oh, it's horrible. Ugh.